So any questions from last week? Any questions about the first 2 chapters or thoughts or anything?
Define Hesed again.
Hesed, so this is Rabbi Dr. Tamara Cohen Eskenazi. She says Hesed in Ruth is not so much a case of good people doing good things, but rather an example of how ordinary people with mixed motives become extraordinary through the cultivation of Hesed. It's loving kindness, loyalty, kindness, doing things for other people without a motive of getting something in return, doing kind things. So, and it's a very important word in the Hebrew Bible. It can also be covenantal between God and the people. So, yeah, it's throughout Scripture. Does that make sense, or okay? Anything else? No. Okay.
Yeah, the rain's coming down.
The garden will be so happy hitting here.
It's really pretty. I like being able to see it out there. Okay, so let's start with 3. We'll read again like we did last time. I'll start. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you, so that it may be well with you. Now here is our kinsman Boaz, with those young women you have been working. See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now wash and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." She said to her, "All that you tell me, I will do."
So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was in a contented mood, he went to lie down at the end of a heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over your servant, for you were next of kin." You're doing something by somebody's car up there.
Okay, what page are we on?
Well, I'm on 10. He said, May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. For all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman. But now, though it is true that I am a near kinsman, there is another than I, closely related than I. Remain this night, and in the morning if he will act as next of kin for you, good, let him do it. If he is not willing to act as next of kin for you, then as the Lord lives, I will act as next of kin for you. Lie down until the morning."
So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before one person could recognize another. For he said, "It must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." And he said, "Bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out." So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. And he went into the city. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, "How did things go with you, my daughter?" Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, "He gave me 6 measures of barley, for he said, 'Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" She replied, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today."
So what are your responses?
Apparently Boaz is a lot older than
Yeah.
he would expect her to be looking for a man at more her age.
Yeah.
And he was concerned about her reputation too.
Right.
Get out of here before they see you here.
Right.
And I've heard in other studies that lying at his feet was kind of a euphemism for what they were really doing.
Right.
Which is interesting to me because the Bible is pretty clear that sex belongs inside of marriage, and these people aren't married.
Mm-hmm.
But this story doesn't condemn them for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Next of kin hopefully.
So
Yeah.
I think, because in this case, so she says, you are a Goel, a redeemer. So I think what he recognizes is that she's doing this for Naomi, to take care of Naomi, and that's why he says what he says. And what he's, worthy woman is actually a strong woman, a woman of strength. So, so he recognizes that she's acting out of hused for her mother-in-law.
I wonder if Boaz is more of Naomi's age,
Could be.
or in between the mother-in-law and the daughter's age.
And notice how Naomi is looking in the best interest of her daughter-in-law at the beginning. I need to seek some security for you. This story is significant too, I think, because so often in stories, mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law are at odds. And in this story, they're acting with love towards one another and taking care of one another. So you got the sexual undertones in the story. So, and they debate over whether feet means legs, she could have uncovered his legs, or genitalia. So different scholars, because it's not necessarily clear in the language. It's just the language of feet, foot. So.
I wonder why the other kinsman didn't want. Sure she was.
Well, we will move on to that.
Yeah, I don't know what it means to act as next of kin for you. You know what that means?
Jewish
So
law.
there's a redeemer in the family who takes care of family members. So takes care of selling land or protecting people, the weaker in the family. So in a tribal community. So Naomi sees him, Boaz, as a redeemer. So there must have been other redeemers within the family who could help. Probably people who had money and could take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But generally it's a brother, maybe, that Ruth's
Well, that's
husband didn't have a brother.
the Levirate marriage. So, and there's also arguments about that. So Levirate marriage is when a brother, so when one brother dies and his wife is left without an heir, and he's left without an heir, she is expected to marry the other brother. And so you see in Genesis, when Omar, I don't know if you remember this story, so Tamar gets married. Do you know the story of Tamar? I probably don't want to go down rabbit holes because that'll just be confusing. But there is one story in the Bible about how this brother refuses to act as the leaver, and God kills him, basically. So, yeah, because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. So,
We have a resident of the lodge who was married to a minister who died, and his mother would invite her to meals, and the deceased brother, the brother of the deceased, came and would pick up the resident, take him to the mother's house. But when the mother died, he totally disappeared. He moved to town and didn't give her an address, and we were thinking, if he'd followed the Bible, he would have married her, which she would have liked. But he just escaped.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a positive thing, because if the families are really messed up, do you really want to stay in the family? Back then, it was kind of it was a matter of survival, but I'm sort of glad that women are more independent now, and we don't have to rely on
She
that.
has to have her broker figure out arrangements when she dies and all, but she doesn't have anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Sad.
yeah. So yeah, anything else about chapter 3 that you noticed or that you have questions about? So let's move on to chapter 4. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there than the next of kin of whom Boaz had spoken came passing by. So Boaz said, "Come over, friend, sit down here." And he went over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. He then said to the next of kin, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, so that I may know. For there is no one prior to you to redeem it, and I come after you." So he said, "I will redeem it." Then Boaz said, "The day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you are also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance." At this, the next of kin said, "I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it."
Now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one took off a sandal and gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the next of kin said to Boaz, "Acquire it for yourself," he took off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon, have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, to be my wife, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance, in order that the name of the dead may not be cut off from the kindred and from the gate of his native place. Today you are witnesses." And all the people who were at the gate along with the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together build up the house of Israel. May you produce children in Ephrath and bestow a name in Bethlehem, and through the children that the Lord will give you by the young woman. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah."
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When they came together, the Lord made her conceive, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without next of kin. May his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has borne him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom and became his nurse. The women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse, the father of David.
Now these are the descendants of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron, Hezron of Ram, Ram of Aminadab, Aminadab of Nahshon, Nashon of Salmon, Salmon of Boaz, Boaz of Obed, Obed of Jesse, and Jesse of David. And then that's going to lead into 1 Samuel, where we get the stories of people who become kings.
Is that David, the King David?
Saul and then King David, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Funny, it's even more about the property and who's gonna get the property, and then kind of, at the end, well, then you've also got,
Yeah,
got Ruth, because she goes with the land.
All right,
Oh, well, no,
right.
thank you. It makes
Well-
you wonder why he didn't want her.
well, it sounds like, so one scholar posits that Boaz did this intentionally because he really wants to marry
Yeah,
Ruth.
yeah.
And so he, but this is new information that there's some land out there that Naomi has because they've never talked about that. So how does Boaz know that? Where did they? But I suppose because it's in the family, so they probably just know maybe. But yeah, and the next of kin doesn't have a name, and in Hebrew it's just someone or so and so. It's just it's a nameless redeemer person in the family. So there must have been levels of redeemers. Like this is the first person you go to, and so. And so this is based on Leviticus 25:25, which says, if any one of your kin falls into difficulty and sells a piece of property, then the next of kin shall come and redeem what the relative has sold, so that you can keep it in the family.
Yeah.
And Boaz makes it really clear that he's going to buy the property if this other man does not. So the guy has an out. So he doesn't have to, it's not like he has to take it.
Yes, the land wasn't growing any grain there in Moab, or they would have, or else
Oh.
Naomi would have gone with Ruth to the land that she inherited.
Yeah. So the other thing is that even if this Redeemer purchases the land, it's complicated because if Naomi has any male heirs who come along, so then the Redeemer will lose the land to the heir. So it wasn't really worth it to him to stick with it, especially when Boaz said he was going to. And actually, in the Hebrew, he doesn't say Ruth goes along with it. What he says is, I'm going to marry Ruth, and you can buy the property. But what that means is, as soon as Ruth has a son, that property goes back to the son. So it's not really worth it for the Redeemer to buy that property
I see.
if Ruth is going to have a son. So it seemed like a trick on the part of Boaz. Okay, I'm putting these so
Interesting, they had the whole group of people there as witnesses.
yeah.
Court hearing. I remember in
Yeah.
Israel, we saw where, I think it was Moses, had a gathering of the people and decided he was going to take his place or be his helper.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, so that people witness it. So it's not just one person against the other person saying this happened. You've got a whole bunch of people who remember what happened.
But he just happened to be passing by too, and
Yeah, exactly.
because it's a small town.
Right, exactly. It's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I gave you some questions. And one of the questions you already asked, Fran, why do you think Naomi chooses to send Ruth to Boaz rather than going to speak to him herself?
I wonder if she's past childbearing age. So,
Naomi?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure she is.
So So, wouldn't make any sense for her to want Boaz as a husband.
Well, I think I understand the question more as, why didn't she go to Boaz and say, hey, could you marry this girl, And, but instead she develops this elaborate plot for Ruth to go out and notice how she tells her to get all, fancy with perfume and oil and all this stuff and get very seductive, yes. So maybe she just figured that would work better because Boaz wasn't taking a hint.
They'll have a young one.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, did Naomi know that was Boaz's land when she said, or when Ruth went out there? Because, I got the feeling it was after she went out and, that's my relative, that maybe she didn't know that was Boaz's land until she came back and Ruth told her.
Yeah. Maybe not. Because they've been gone for years, so things could have changed. Boaz would have been a lot younger when they left. So, yeah.
Worked out well.
So why do you think Ruth goes along with Naomi's plan? Or even protest? She doesn't even protest. Like, what? What do you expect him to do?
Yeah, especially in light of the fact that, there seems to be some shame associated with this sexual encounter.
Yeah. It would have been a very dangerous thing for Ruth to do, to lie down next to a man like that and not be married. It would put her in a lot of danger.
Their reputation.
Yeah.
And gee, what if she did get pregnant with Boaz and the other guy wanted her?
Yeah.
I guess they wouldn't know whose was whose.
Well, and that's the other thing in that story. There's no talk that actually anything sexual actually happened. It's just this energy, but there's no, it's not like anything actually happened. Boaz cared about her well-being, his well-being. I wonder if he knew that Naomi had sent her to do this.
Yeah, and I guess he knows she's a Moabite, so
Yeah.
that doesn't bother him, which
Yeah.
is a nice lesson.
Yeah. Ruth puts her safety and reputation on the line before a man of power in order to help others. What does this tell us about how God wants us to act towards our fellow humans?
Accepting of all nationalities and peoples.
Yeah.
So nice in Beaverton that they have a leadership class for foreigners who come in, who then become council.
Right. Has there been a time when you've risked something for another person? This is kind of serious, but maybe it could be a less risky.
Nothing comes to mind.
I was in a church that was known for ministries for singles after my husband left me, and the minister in charge of our group said there shouldn't be alcohol in any of the gatherings. I had a gathering every month, and also sexual propriety and so on. And I wasn't very popular because when they came to my house and they brought the wine, he said, don't have the wine. I don't want to be any part of this.
You were expected to break the rules.
Yeah, and I'd heard there was some some romantic encounters in the bunkhouses when they went on a retreat, and I was not in favor of that and let it be known. So I was very unpopular in the group.
Yeah. I remember when I was in college, it was like I was 24, and I was staying in the dorm in college, and this 19-year-old asked me to buy alcohol, and I'm like, no. Yeah, she didn't like me much. But it was like...
You know, the chaplain and I were kind of on the outs with the rest of the group because we were kind of seen as having attitude of better than you, or more moral than you.
Yeah. So in Matthew's genealogy of Jesus, only 4 female ancestors are listed. Tamar from Genesis 38, Rahab from Joshua 2, Ruth, and Bathsheba from 2 Samuel 11 through 12. Discuss these women and what their inclusion in the genealogy tells us about redemption. All of these women had questionable sexual...
Rahab was a prostitute, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was.
And then she helped him out the window.
Yeah.
Escape.
Tamar dressed up as a prostitute to ensure that her dead husband would have a male heir. So she had sex with her father-in-law as a prostitute to get that male heir because it was the brother. The brother refused to do it, you know. So, and then she was praised for her action because she was doing what was right, and the family hadn't been doing what was right. So. And then of course Bathsheba, who I would argue was raped. It wasn't consensual. Like, because David was the king. What are you gonna say to the king?
So did Tamar disguise herself?
Yeah. Yeah, she disguised herself as a prostitute.
Well, the firstborn, Bathsheba, died, didn't he?
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
punishment for David.
Yeah.
I guess they were
So
all
it's
forgiven.
so it's pretty significant that they're in Matthew's genealogy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Although all of the men listed in the genealogy are sinners too, right? I mean, they're not perfect either. So, yeah. I know part of Jesus's heritage.
When the book we studied in the class about with the power and the glory, and how a lot of the Christians had broken off during the COVID and were for Trump and for very conservative exclusionary things, and when questioned about their behavior, they said, well, David acted like that. So.
I know.
So how can you condemn me?
But
It's biblical.
yeah, but God didn't appreciate how David behaved sometimes. So I love the story of Nathan. I almost called Xander Nathan. Do you remember that story?
No.
Where Nathan goes to David about Bathsheba, and he tells him a story about a farmer who a sheep was stolen from the farmer, and David gets really incensed, and he says, you are that person who stole that sheep. You know? But the thing is about David is that he always felt remorse, and that makes a difference, I think.
Okay.
Like, yeah. yeah. So chapter 4, why is Ruth's non-Jewish status central to the understanding of this story?
Boaz accepted a Moabite, which was kind of,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess, equivalent to the blacks in our society.
yeah.
What's really changed?
Yeah, I don't know if the next of kin would be obligated to redeem the
Yeah,
land for somebody who is associated with the Moabite.
that's true, yeah. Of course, it would be Naomi that he would be
Yeah,
taking care
that's
of.
true,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah. It was important to the storyteller for some reason. Their one argument is that it was an argument against Ezra and Nehemiah, and they're very against marriage between, with foreign wives. So,
Right.
yeah. So what are some of the key themes in Ruth? Where in today's world do you see these themes at work?
I remember when Coles had an ad with a biracial marriage, and people screamed at it and criticized it so much they took the ad down.
Oh, wow.
But now I can hardly see a drama on TV or ad where there's not an interracial couple.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
very
awesome.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are many more, it seems to me, male actors in the soap operas.
Yeah.
I recently watched the first season of MASH, and I was really impressed by the fact that all the doctors are male and all the nurses are female. You know, it wouldn't be that way if we did it today.
Yeah.
Although it was supposed to be taking place in the 50s, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the 50s it was very much like that, right? The doctors were male, the nurses were female.
Yeah,
There weren't any male nurses even then, right?
not very many.
And now there are male nurses.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, Hesed, of course, is one of the themes of kindness, taking care of
Take care of people, yeah.
with no motivation. Although there is some motivation, survival for Naomi and Ruth, of course, but Boaz doesn't necessarily have any motivation.
No, he's just a good person.
Yeah.
I'm curious whether Boaz already had some wives, whether this was his only wife.
I think he's glad to have a young one. Have more children.
Well, she might not be that young because she was married to Naomi's son for 10 years. So, yeah.
So if he knew that, you would think he might think she was barren and couldn't have children, which would might make her less desirable to him.
Oh, ignore that one about Esther. We'll talk about that next week. So I guess that's all the questions. Any last thoughts or anything about the book of Ruth in general?
Well, I hope I'll remember the story this time. It seems like I forget it and then I become reacquainted with it.
Yeah,
I think it was good to study that and learn more about it.
yeah.
But we're not gonna have much time for Esther next week,
I know,
so.
it's such a
So maybe we
bummer.
ought to go ahead and start it anyway.
Well, we could.
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
the
let's
book
go
of
to
Esther.
Esther.
Mr. Janet. Well, I guess Esther really stuck her life on the line to
Yeah.
save the Jewish people. Whereas
And in a way,
Ruth
Ruth
risked her
did.
reputation.
Well, yeah.
I didn't understand in the story of Esther what the silver shekels, where the money took place in the story.
Right. Let's see what page is Esther on.
448.
Okay.
But I had pictured a hanging noose, but it was a spike that killed Haman.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
think like on top of a big nail.
Yeah.
Pretty gruesome.
So shall we read chapter 1 of
Sure.
Esther?
Sure.
Okay.
What page are we on?
We are page 448. So this happened in the days of Ahasuerus, the same Ahasuerus who ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his officials and ministers. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were present. While he displayed the great wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and pomp of his majesty for many days, 180 days in all.
When these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in the citadel of Susa, both great and small, a banquet lasting for 7 days in the court and garden of the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and blue hangings tied with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry and marble, mother of pearl, and colored stones. Drinks were served in golden goblets, goblets of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. Drinking was by flagons without restraint, for the king had given orders to all the officials of his palace to do as each one desired. Furthermore, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the palace of King Ahasuerus.
On the 7th day, when the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who attended him, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing a royal crown, in order to show the people and officials her beauty, for she was fair to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, and conveyed by the eunuchs. At this the king was enraged, and his anger burned within him.
Then the king consulted the sages who knew the laws, for this was the king's procedure toward all who were versed in law and custom. And those next to him were Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 officials of Persia and Media, who had access to the king and sat first in the kingdom. According to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she has not performed the command of King Ahasuerus conveyed by the eunuchs? Oh, that was a question. What is to be done to Queen Vashti? Then Memucan said in the presence of the king and the officials, not only has Queen Vashti done wrong to the king, but also to all the officials and all the peoples who are in all the province of King Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen will be made known to all women, causing them to look with contempt upon their husbands, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day the noble ladies of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will rebel against the king's officials, and there will be no end of contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal order to go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be altered that Vashti is never again to come before King Ahasuerus. And let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. So when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all of his kingdom, vast as it is, all women will give honor to their husbands, high and low alike.
This advice pleased the king and the officials, and the king did as the noon men proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, declaring that every man should be master in his own house.
I remember this section always makes me really angry, like when I've read it in the past, like because
It makes you
it's
wonder
so
why she,
disrespectful to his wife, you know?
Yes.
and why did she refuse to come? It'd be something if he went to her and there was a private conversation and no, I don't want to go, you're too drunk, I don't want to be with you. But it goes to the eunuchs and goes, all these people know that she's turning him down. I can see why he would really be insulted and humiliated as a king.
Right.
So I wonder what she thought was going to happen.
Well, I mean, he was just showing her off, like eye candy or something, you know?
Yeah.
That's like really, gross.
I wonder, do people today want to show off all their wealth like that, or are they kind of modest about
Well,
it?
there's the, the trophy wife, there's still that.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, he was having a contest, wasn't he, later to see which was the prettiest, to try them all out and see which one he'd stick with?
Yeah, he's a real winner, that king is. Although, I read one scholar who said that this is kind of a comedy, actually. So, and people have read it as a comedy, which is so interesting. I had never thought of it that way. So, but, yeah.
Thought it was going to catch on quick, and all the men were going to not be told what to do by their wives. As if the wives wouldn't have any say about that, or
Right. So let's go to chapter 2. It's 10 till noon. Do you guys wanna read another chapter, and then we can continue next time we meet? or if you've already read it, friend, and if Janet, if you can read it, and I'll still come with an outline in case we have new people, but
Sure.
yeah. So after these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had abated, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's servants who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought out for the king, and let the king appoint commissioners in all the provinces of his kingdom, to gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem in the citadel of Susa, under custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, that their cosmetic treatments be given them, and let the girl who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This pleased the king, and he did so.
Now there was a Jew in the citadel of Susa whose name was Mordecai,
Mordici.
son of Jair, son of Shimi, son of Kish, Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem among the captives carried away with King Jeconiah of Judah, whom King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had carried away. Mordecai had brought up Hadash, that is Esther, his cousin, for she had neither father nor mother. The girl was fair and beautiful, And when her father and her mother died, Mordecai adopted her as his own daughter. So when the king's order and his edict were proclaimed, and when many young women were gathered in the citadel of Susa in custody of Haggai, Esther also was taken into the king's palace and put in custody of Haggai, who had charge of the women. The girl pleased him and won his favor, and he quickly provided her with her cosmetic treatments and her portion of food and their 7 chosen maids from the king's palace, and advanced her and her maids to the best place in the harem. Esther did not reveal her people or kindred, for Mordecai had charged her not to tell. Every day Mordecai would walk around in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and how she fared.
The turn came for each girl to go into the king Ahasuerus. After being 12 months under the regulations for the women, since this was the regular period of their cosmetic treatment, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics for women. When the girl went in to the king, she was given whatever she asked for to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she went in. In the morning she came back to the second harem in custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She did not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and she was summoned by name.
When the turn came for Esther, daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter, to go into the king, she asked for nothing except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who had charge of the women, advised. Now Esther was admired by all who saw her. When Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus in his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign, the king loved Esther more than all the other women. Of all the virgins she won his favor and devotion, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great banquet to all his officials and ministers, Esther's banquet. He also granted a holiday to the provinces and gave gifts with royal liberality.
When the virgins were being gathered together, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Now Esther had not revealed her kindred or her people as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther obeyed Mordecai just as when she was brought up by him. In those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teres, 2 of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Ahasuerus. But the matter came to the knowledge of Mordecai when he told it to Queen Esther. And Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. When the affair was investigated and found to be so, both the men were hanged on the gallows. It was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king.
So she was kind of loyal to the king. She showed her loyalty to the king before she needed to ask him for something.
Saved his life. He didn't get killed.
Yeah.
You would think he would remember that a little better earlier on. I guess he was drinking so much he probably his memory liquefied.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is 5 till, so next week is the worship party, and then the week after that we'll meet. And yeah.
There's nothing during the summer.
No.